Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Record Rangers podcast. My name's Gavin Bennett and I'm delighted to say once again I'm joined by the Record Sports Andy Newport. Andy, how are you doing?
I'm very well. Yourself, Gavin?
Not bad. So let's start. Well, there's only one place to start. Rangers 0, Benfica 1. Rangers out of the Europa League at the last 16 stage. So I just watched the draw earlier there. I'm assuming you did as well.
No, I didn't actually. I missed it. So who did Benfica get in the end?
So here's what you could have won. Marseille, who I read were the lowest ranked team. So, and of course, that would have opened a few old wounds going back to that Champions League game. But no, instead...
Velodrome was high on my wish list. I quite fancied that. So that's a little bit of a disappointment.
Is that right?
I fancied the Velodrome.
Well, I'm sorry, Andy, we can't all get what we want. We'll have to make do with the road and the miles to Dundee on Sunday, but we'll get to that.
Actually, I won't, because I'm going to Motherwell on Saturday. So,
you're going to Motherwell?
Is your man for Record Sport and Sunday this weekend? Okay,
that's a nice wee plug. Make sure you read that all on Sunday and Monday. On Monday, yeah.
Monday's day.
Okay, well, Andy. So, obviously, it is Benfica against Marseille after a 1-0 defeat at Ibrox. Was it just a case of, this team under Philip Clement, he has rescued the season, there's no doubt about it. They were chasing on 4 competitions. That's now down to 3 domestic competitions. Was it just a case of a team that's been punching above its weight and just lacked quality, and maybe you could throw in energy as well? They looked leggy. Is that all it was, or was there more to it than that?
No, I definitely think, at the end of the day, they've played 180 minutes and it's been decided by the odd goal and 5, a breakaway goal for a corner, effectively. That was, it was decided by an absolute matter of millimetres through VAR. So, there certainly wasn't much between the teams, which says an awful lot about the work that Philippe Clement has done with this Rangers team, considering, Benfica, what's their squad worth, £140 million. They spent £80 million, in the summer. So, for Rangers to take a team like Benfica and push them so close, it speaks, speaks volumes about the work that Rangers have done lately. I do think you're right when you talk about them being leggy and being tired. I just think that they look like a team that was sort of running out of ideas and running out of a bit of gas in the latter stages. And, I thought Philippe Clement was right when he spoke about the fact that, when he's looking to try and rescue the tie with 20 minutes left, when he's putting on the likes of Matondo or Cantwell and Roof, these guys are all newly back from injury. They're, Cantwell was his first appearance. Matondo's had 15-20 minutes here and there. Roof, has been like that much of the season. Has barely really started the game, barely had any sort of prolonged runs in the team, and yet they're the guys he's having to turn to. And I think that is the real frustration. I think for Rangers is that just the impact that injuries have had on this part of the season. They're still very much in the fight in terms of obviously leading the Premiership race. They're a great chance of winning a Scottish Cup as well. But in terms of Europe, just not having the full array of their talents to go and push Benfica and see what with both teams being at full strength they could really achieve. And that'll be a frustration. But part of me also thinks that I wrote at my match report last night that as much as the manager has said that he doesn't agree with this line of thinking, but this train of thought, but I really do think that had they gone through another 2 games against, you say Marseille, as much as okay, it would have been 2 great ties, and I'm sure if Rangers had got through, they'd been delighted to have missed out the likes of a Milan or a Liverpool or a Leverkusen, but there would be 2 taxing ties at a time when I think most fans would say that the league's a priority. The bread and butter is winning a championship this season. One in the last 12 or 13 years. This has to be the priority this year, is making sure that they get the league won. And if they went through in Europe and had another couple of games to play, I just think that could have taken a real toll on a squad that already looks like it's spread thin. So that's the silver lining. That's to try to put a a positive spin on it if you from a Rangers perspective. But the manager said himself last night he saw no reason why the team couldn't cope with it. I'm not so sure I agree with him, but I certainly don't think that Rangers were outclassed at all at any stage during the two ties. I mean, you've seen Benfica they pretty much adopted the Rangers approach from the first leg. They sat in, they tried to look in the counter, and unfortunately for Rangers, they were the one that got the winning goal.
But that's the thing, Andy. I mean, all the things that we've said are realistic. Philip Clement inherited, he inherited a shambles, from Michael Beale, and he's turned it around, and he's now been edged out over two legs against Benfica, who, as you say, have spent a fortune. But and we just say, well, is it a team that's just it's just been punching above its weight for too long, and eventually just that lack of quality showed up. That's the reason argument, but you can never have that in the world of Scottish football. So we always have to play a blame game, and I see. So there's a couple of things from last night. I mean, one is obviously this one, and Ali McCoy's mentioned it in commentary. This tactic at corners, the high line, pushing everyone up. I mean, at the start of the game, were you surprised by it? As I say, McCoy's identified it pretty early on to say he couldn't quite believe it. Benfica were catching him on the counter, and of course that then leads to the goal. Were you surprised by it? Did he gamble and it backfired?
I think he thought that given the sort of issues that they've got in the forward line at the minute, Dessers, it's now 5 games without a goal, which is the longest sort of dry spell he's had since the manager came in, and hasn't really looked at any point in that run of score like he was going to score. If you saw last night the chance he has when he's offside, he still manages to hit it against the keeper. And then obviously Scott Wright coming in again, a guy who's never really been a consistent performer since he joined Rangers under Steven Gerrard. And, the onus of being at home, then I think, you do need to go a wee bit more, not risky, but not gung-ho, but you need to be the one who looks to take the game by the scruff of the neck. So I think that was clearly the thinking there. They thought, set pieces could be a big weapon for them. I must say, I don't think great Rangers attacking set pieces have been great this season. It seems a long way away since the days when Tom Coulshaw under Gerrard was sort of masterminding sort of set pieces opportunities by the week. So they were obviously hoping that could change and they would get something, but they sort of huffed and puffed throughout the game, and even the set pieces didn't really lead to all that much. So was it a gamble? Yeah, well, obviously it's cost them in the end, but I mean it's by an absolute smallest of margins. I mean, you see what was it? He had his his knee must have been onside sort of halfway line by a matter of millimetres. So Rafa Silva. So it's hard to be too critical when it comes down to those kind of margins. But as I say, I just think that the frustration for Clement will be that he wasn't able to go toe-to-toe with Benfica, with strongest 11, and then that would have been interesting to see how this team got on, because they are dangerous when they're at full strength. I mean, if you put a Danilo in there instead of a Dessers, and I'm not saying Danilo is a clinical striker. He's had his moments when he sort of misses chances, but he gets involved more. Roof, if he's fully fit as a guy, he's a clever player, gets into spaces, involves himself in play in a way that was it Dessers had 5 touches in the first half. That's not good enough. Rangers have been sort of Rangers fans in recent years. I've seen Alfredo Morelos sort of almost at times carry this team through single-handedly, and I think that's what they expect of their front man. What they don't expect is as a forward that doesn't go hiding, but just finds it difficult to get himself involved just in the run of play. I mean, you always understand that at times against top teams, you might be starved of service, in the box, but you expect your striker to play a part in the general run of play. And Dessers just didn't do enough of that for me, and I think that was a huge sort of failing in this team, is that they just couldn't make any sort of pressure stick in the final third, because a lot went forward, just quickly came back again.
But what do you do in this situation? I mean, as you said, you touched on it earlier. I mean, now we could come back to the argument of should Rangers have bought a striker in January. I think many people felt they should. That is something that will be debated from now till the end of the season. I mean, particularly if Rangers don't win the league, they'll say, was that the difference? But they didn't. That's that's the fact of the matter. What does he do when you see someone like Dessers last night, and people have made their mind up from very early on that this is a guy who's just not up to it, and yet hopes are pinned on him. So what is the alternative?
I'm not sure there was much of an alternative than just to try and hope for the best with him and hope that you can a roof fit or work with him in such a way that you can. There has been spells, and he definitely has contributed. Until this sort of drought he was on, he was basically averaging a goal every other game, which for most strikers is absolutely is more than an acceptable sort of return. The problem is, Clement spoke about this himself. As much as Rangers were able to go out and bring in a few players in January, but they've all basically been done on the basis that they take them now and pay in the summer. I think Clement's admitted, I think it was with the sit down with the fans recently, that basically the money that there was no money to be spent in January. It had been spent last summer by Beale, and the coffers were bare, and this is why they had to be in a way quite inventive with how they went about recruiting in January. They had to with Diamande, it's a hefty transfer fee at £4.5 million, but they had to basically say we'll take him now, but we'll pay for him in the summer. We get Oscar Cortez, it's similar. It's not an obligation, it's an option to buy, but again, the money doesn't change hands until the summer. I imagine there'll be some sort of a loan fee involved for both players, but in terms of the bulk of the transfer fee, that'll be paid up in the summer. Fabio Silva, I'm not sure Rangers he'll be there next season, given the sort of money it costs Wolves. £35 million. Even I'm not sure Wolves will get that money back, but I'm not even still. I would find it unlikely that Rangers would be able to afford him in the summer. So you're talking about could they've got out and get another striker? I just think in those, when you consider that players of that are proven goal scorers, any selling club is going to be looking for them to get their money back on them, and they're not going to be certainly giving them away for nothing, or certainly not be giving them away for free for 6 months, even with an obligation to buy, when there'll be plenty of clubs out there that will be able to pay up in January. People talk about how difficult it is to spend in January, and I do think you have to give clubs and managers a wee bit of sort of leeway when it comes to that front, because it is difficult, because it's the worst possible time in the season to be trying to offload players, or clubs are so reluctant to be letting go guys that are of value. So in that sense, I think it was always going to be difficult for Rangers to bring in a striker. They talk about Lawrence Shankland. Hearts would be wanting £5 million at least for him, I would imagine, given what qualifying for Europe is worth to them. So Rangers were just never going to be in a position to pay that money there and then in January. Okay, maybe the summer, it's a different conversation to be had if they think that he's the guy to sign. But so I think that what I'm trying to say is that I think they were always going to have to try and muddle on with Dessers as best they could. But I think see the limitations in him. I do think Clement has done a tremendous job to get him to a point where he is contributing. He scored some valuable goals, and if Rangers are going to win the title, then Cyril Dessers will more than have played his part. You couldn't have said that at the start of the season when Michael Beale was sacked. He'd scored 3 goals in something like 10 or 12 games, and most of them had been sort of bounced off him or ricochets. So I think that was just what was the old saying? You can only urinate with the appendage you have, and I think that's what Rangers were left with doing last night.
That's a very polite way of putting that in. Is that the way they used to say it in Paisley, or?
Bearsden's where I'm from originally, so that's
sorry, right, originally, right, okay. Okay, so having said all that, and I've listened to what you're saying, but here is the alternative view, and the Daily Record hotline is always a good barometer.
Oh, yes.
So I'll just read out 2 emails that dropped in this morning. The first one, Rick Hart emailed, unless Rangers drop Dessers now, they will have no chance of winning the title. He runs around like a headless chicken. He should have scored twice against Benfica. Ruth is just as bad. Surely there's a striker who can score goals in the academy. Not buying Lawrence Shankland will cost us the title. And Henry McCoy emailed, sorry to say my Rangers team desperately need a striker and a fullback that can head a ball clear. Yilmaz is too small. loses the ball and left us wide open. Now, the headline on the hotline is Rangers lavish with the Europa League praise, what we touched on earlier, but hotline spots 3-week links threatening imminent domestic collapse. So that was the point I was going to come to you. That was what I was going to come to you next to say, okay, they're out of Europe, but really what happens next is key. A, the reaction, and B, these callers are saying is that basically it's shone a light on the deficiencies and it could cost them the title. Do you not go that far?
I don't think. Listen, at the end of the day, as I said at the start, Benfica have spent £90 million this summer. The squad's rated at £140, £150 million, and they've beaten Rangers by the odd goal over, 180 minutes. So I don't think we need to overreact too much to the performance. And I think it has to be singling out Yilmaz. I think he's been possibly one of Rangers' best performers this calendar year so far. For me, if he carried on, if he'd started the season like that and played regularly at the start of the season, I think you'd be talking about him as a Player of the Year candidate. As we spoke about with Dessers, he's gone off the boil a wee bit. We know that he's capable of that. We saw it at the start of the season, but we've also seen the way that the manager's been able to work with him and get as best as he can out of him. Mm-hmm. I'm still not sure that there's many other alternatives to playing through the middle, because as much as Fabio Silva's had to sort of shunt out to the left because of injuries, I still think that's his best position. I think you saw the first leg in Lisbon. I think you saw Easter Road the other night. That for me, that's his most natural position. He's got that freedom to drift inside. He can go down the line. He can pick up the wee pockets of space. He can come short. He can link up. When he tends to do that, he tends to do all those kind of similar things when you play him up front, and it just leaves Rangers a wee bit with the lack of a focal point. I think Dessers, for all his failings, at least when he's there through the middle, there is a sort of, you can see what they're trying to achieve with him there. Don't get me wrong. I think they would be far better served with somebody who, is more effective and certainly involves himself in play a lot more. But I think we've talked about the number of misses he has, but he's missing chances that Silva just isn't on the end of most of the time. I'm thinking back to the game at St Johnstone last month. Silva plays for probably about an hour, barely has a sniff of a chance. Dessers comes on and he misses 4 or 5 chances, but he's on the end of 4 or 5 chances because he's a guy who stays between the centre backs, who does most of his work at the width of the post. So, it's a hard one for Philippe Clement to sort of work around, because you've got Silva is probably undoubtedly is a better player, a more technically gifted player, but just he doesn't have that lethal mindset when it comes to being an out-and-out number 9. That Dessers is more of a poacher's poacher, but he's just erratic, and we've been saying it all season. It's nothing we don't know already, that Cyril Dessers is not somebody that you can rely on. You couldn't hang your hat on him. Certainly couldn't hang the hat on him last night. So, as I say, that they've not got much more option right now than to just persevere with it and hope that they can get some of the bodies back. Sima, the manager was talking last night about perhaps having Sima back soon. Cortez, we're unsure if we'll see him again this season. Danilo, again, looks like if he's going to be back, it might be the very, very tail end. And by that point, is he going to have enough time to get up to fitness? I think that the more likelihood is that the team can try and find some way to get Kemar Roofe, back playing, maybe if it's not starting games, but certainly coming off the bench more often and playing for longer spells and getting that rhythm, being involved and scoring goals and creating chances, and just something they haven't had. They definitely do need another option up front. There's obviously 9 huge games, and Rangers really can't afford to have guys going off the boil at this point of the season. Yeah,
we've talked on this podcast and we heaped a lot of praise on him, on Diomande, thinking a very shrewd buy, certainly one for the future. But again, just as I mentioned earlier, when people are always looking for scapegoats, of course, Philippe Clement actually mentioned him by name, which I thought was a wee bit surprising, because funnily enough, when I read what made me think about it when I was reading the piece that you filed earlier this morning from the press conference last night on Jack Butland I don't know if it was you who asked him about Jack Butland, but he was saying, it's him. We don't talk about him. It's we, and it's together. Yeah, talking about the goal, he actually said it was, I've got the quote, he basically said it was a mistake from Diamandi, isn't it? Yeah.
He failed to track the runner, and he changed his run, and Silva, obviously, if he'd just stayed with Silva, he would have probably matched him stride for stride and been there to stop him getting the goal.
Were you surprised he named him or not?
I don't think he was doing it in a sort of finger point way. I think he was just trying to say, listen, these are when you've got young players like Diamandi, they're new to this sort of level of football. He's played, I think he played 4 or 5 of Northland's 6 games in the Conference League this season. And that was his first taste of European football. He's then obviously been thrust into playing a last 16 game in the Europa League against, as I say, a team of Benfica's class. That, these are mistakes you're going to have to expect. That was the way I took it. That it wasn't so much, laying the blame at him, but just trying to explain away that this is a young player still finding his feet at this level, and that's what you're going to have to accept. That's where Rangers are as a club now in terms of how they recruit. They have to go young, they have to go cheap, and that means, you have to give up on something, and that might be experience, it might be, in many respects, it's talent. You're having to sort of buy in potential and hope that they fulfil that. So that's what the case was with Mohamed Diamandi. They've obviously paid a large fee from him, but the hope will be that he goes on and earns the club 20, 25, 30 million pounds in future. But right now he's not the finished article. I thought he was good in spells last night. Again, I think he's another one that looked a wee bit leggy. So he fell out the game a little bit in Lisbon in the second half, and I think that's natural. Before he signed for the club, I think it'd been November before the last time he'd played. So, I don't think he's fully up to full speed. And the manager's spoken about that just in terms of we spoke to him on Wednesday before the game, just about, the fact that there is signs that this team's starting to show a wee bit of weariness, show a wee bit of legginess, and the manager admitted that there's certain guys that play week in, week out because they're into that rhythm. Your Goldsons, your Taverniers, your Lundströms, they've been doing it for 3-4 years now. They know how to cope with this hectic schedule. But there's other guys that are just, it's all new to them, and it's going to take a toll on their bodies. They've not built up those reserves of stamina yet. And I think you saw that a wee bit with Diamandi. I thought he was good in spells, but other times he just sort of drifted out and obviously makes a mistake with a goal. And it's just, that's what happens when your condition is tested. If you're not at peak fitness, that's when you tend to make the sort of, your decision making tends to break down. I think you saw that with the goal.
Yeah. So when you look at the overall picture, then but how concerned? There's not long to go, but can you see them getting through it? Yeah.
I wrote my match report last night, but I thought, as much as Clement is loath to admit it, and he said it again last night, that he saw no problem with carrying on the Europa League. I just think that now they're going to have 3 midweeks. They're going to have time for players to recover. Obviously, if they get through the game at Dens Park on Sunday, then they've got 2 weeks before the next game for those guys that aren't going to be in international duty. So the majority of the boys will be able to put their feet up, recharge, maybe do a wee bit of fitness work in the training ground, a wee bit more tactical work. That'll do them the power of good. You'll be able to get some guys back from injury. I'm sure that'll be the hope as well. Can you give the likes of Todd Cantwell a sort of mini pre-season? He's obviously missed the last month. Manager again referenced the fact that he's having to throw in guys to chase the game who aren't up to speed. Well, can you use this next 2 weeks to try and get a bit of mileage into his legs and get that fitness back? And as I say, the recovery time between games is good. There's going to be more of that now. So I think there's no need to be overly. I don't think the Rangers fans need to be overly worried, overly pessimistic now. I do think that in the bigger picture, the silver lining of going out last night is that it can help their domestic ambitions. It can allow them that breathing room. We've seen the last 2 times that Rangers have made European finals, just the toll it took in their domestic ambitions. They were going for 4 back in 2008 and crawled over the line with that nonsense sort of fixture list they had at the end. And came up short, and then even as you say, when you look back to 2022 and the road to Seville, they're having to play Joe Aribo up front. Scott Wright starting a European final when he, as I said earlier, he's not really ever been a regular, all because the injuries were mounting up and piling on top of each other. So, the fact that Rangers don't have that to contend with these final 2 months of the season is the sort of, as I say, the positive that they can take from last night's result.
I mean, he's become a bit of a whipping boy, Scott Wright, but and any time he starts, it's always the same. You see the same groans, but I don't know about you, but I thought he was all right last night.
Yeah, a couple of decent runs, but I thought he was raceful at times as well. He wasn't the only one. There was guys across the pitch that had decent spells. I mean, I thought the only one that really stood out for me was John Suter. I thought he was terrific. I thought he was first half. He was, he read every moment of danger, stepped in, won headers, won interceptions, tackles. I thought he was magnificent. But in terms of the forward guys, I mean, I thought Tom Lawrence had an okay first half. Sort of really came off in the second half. Sort of gave the ball away 4 or 5 times in a row. And Silva just couldn't quite get going the way he did in Lisbon. And Scott Wright, and it's hard to be too hard on him. I mean, he's had a lot of opportunities to have regular runs in this team. He's never been able to take it. But a lot of the time that's because of the former other players. And then you see what happens. You're throwing a guy in that, his last start was the game at St Johnstone, as I mentioned earlier on, where he was taken off at half time. That was the last time he started a game. So, I mean, it's hard to expect a guy that's, as I say, isn't up to speed, doesn't, got that week-to-week rhythm to come and expect him to play in a game of that sort of quality and make an impact.
Yeah. I mean, just finally, I mean, I think the way, if you're Philip Clement and the Rangers players now having lost last night, I think if they're now looking ahead, it's simply Dundee away, Hibs at home, and then that massive game against Celtic at home. If you're sitting and you're saying you're I know they'll say one game at a time and all that, but if you say you win those 3 games, forget about the Scottish Cup. If you can somehow win those 3 games, you're minimum 5 points clear.
Yeah,
it sounds easy. It sounds easy there, but that's it. You're minimum 5 points clear at the top of the table with however many games to go.
But I will guarantee you that Phil Clement is talking about nothing more than Dens Park.
I know that, but I know that's the way he talk. But I mean, I'm saying to you, I mean, it must be in the minds. That must be 3 games.
Even your top of 3 games, the 9 games for the end of the season. I mean, the finish line is coming to sight. Clement is talking all about. It's spoken so many times about it. It's a marathon, not a sprint sort of thing. And I wrote a piece this week talking about, well, if they had get through the Europa League, if they went all the way, and if they went to Hampden, it'd be 17 games in 72 days period, and it would be, then you're still talking about a marathon. There's still, that's still half a league season effectively still to play potentially. Now it's down to what they're looking at 10, maximum 11 games in that period. So, you are into the final finish now, aren't you? You're looking at that. You can see the finishing line coming into sight. So, they just have to keep doing what they've been doing all season, and that is, since Clement came in, and that is just taking it one game at a time. Because if you knock off, every time you knock off a result, the job in hand just becomes slightly easier, and I think that's the important way to do it. And I think that's the case, and it's a cliche in football because every manager talks about it. If you start looking too far ahead, and if you start worrying about games to come, Old Firm games, and you take your eye off Dundee at the weekend, they're the games you come unstuck in. So I just don't think that the likes of Old Firm games or any other, fixtures, tricky or not, will even come into discussion. It's Dundee midday and Sunday, I think, and then move on to the next one.
Andy, I get you on here to cut through those cliches.
Listen, if you've read any of my stuff, you'll know that there's one thing I indulge in is a good cliche. So
one game at a time. Okay. Okay. No, listen, Andy, thanks a lot for your time again, as always. And enjoy your weekend. And we'll be back on next week, hopefully joined by Scott, who'll be refreshed from a well-earned break watching Cheltenham or doing whatever he's doing. So he might not be refreshed, but he'll be back on.
Judging by some of the pictures I've seen, I'm sure, I'm suspecting there'll be a lot of green around the gills. Are we from Cheltenham and Benidorm?
Yeah, and he'll be penniless. If his tips he's sending you anything to go by, he'll be penniless.
Were the tips you gave me yesterday?
Same ones.
A small fortune, yeah. Thanks a lot.
I'm blaming him. Great stuff, Andy. Thanks a lot. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Bye.
Cheers, love.
Right, cheers, Andy.